Okay, good morning everybody. I'd like to tell you something about a study that we've been doing for the Northern Ireland Environment Agency with myself, Optimise, and FTech consultants from London and RSM Mercure. I've been looking at the economic benefits of protecting the historic environment. Now, a definition of the historic environment largely relates to built heritage. That's, I suppose, the landmark buildings from all eras, such as houses, industrial buildings, castles and forts, such as the Derry walls there, and Tully Castle in Fermanagh on the top right-hand side. Domains, gardens, canals, archaeology, including the rather spooky Janus stone there, for example, on the banks of Lough Erne. Shipwrecks as well, of which Northern Ireland has one of the greatest concentrations in the world. And also mixed cultural heritage natural destinations, such as the famous Causeway Coast there, where you find many heritage features such as castles and the like, alongside the most stunning scenery. I think I've included that beach up there, not because there's any heritage, any physical heritage there as such, but it's just such a fantastic beach, isn't it? It's, have to remind yourself that these places exist and it's not raining all the time. Anyway, in pure economic terms, the scope of the project has been to examine the economic returns to the historic environment, the value added and excess of costs and state grants, and the cost effectiveness of policy to protect these assets. Revenue to the sector has included some very significant public grants and subsidies, and that in return provides income for tourism and for the construction sector, for instance, from renovation and reuse of buildings. Now, an important step in any economic analysis is to quantifying the benefits, is to identify the specific share that is due to the historic environment, as opposed, for example, to construction benefits from other types of activity, public regeneration activity. In addition, there are the wider economic and social benefits associated with the historic environment. And these would be comprised of the benefits to individual well-being, for example, the satisfaction that you get from actually visiting some of these sites, various public good benefits to the community, which I'll discuss later in the presentation, and the stimulus to private and public sector expenditure, investment, and regeneration. So starting with some of the conventional economic benefits. In this regard, this includes firstly income grants and transfers to the sector. This includes funding and services such as personnel provided by the Northern Ireland Environment Agency, which is worth about £11 million per year. Funding from the Northern Ireland Tourist Board, which would be coming at £23 million per year. The Heritage Lottery Fund is also an important source of income at around £5 million per year. And there's also grants from the Department of Social Protection worth around about £10 million per year. In addition, of course, the North has the benefit of a well-resourced charitable organisation in the form of the National Trust, whose income is in the region of £5.5 million per year from Northern Ireland. But the expenditure is probably well in excess of that as well. So they have that benefit, I suppose, that we do not. And as I've noted, the heritage, the historic environment is also an important resource for tourism. Now, in this respect, Northern Ireland, of course, has been at something of a disadvantage compared with other parts of the UK and with Ireland. The tourist sector is growing very rapidly, but of course it's recovering still from events in its recent past. Nevertheless, tourism revenue is worth about £335 million per year, based mainly on the income from visits from people from the rest of the UK and from the Republic. And using approximate visitor numbers, we've estimated the share of tourists visiting historic features at around about 25%. That is to say that historic features feature in about 25% of visits by tourists from abroad or from Ireland. And the spend for that is around about £84 million per year. However, visitors are rarely dedicated to the historic environment alone. So the estimate includes some of the mixed historic and natural heritage destinations, such as the Causeway Coast, which has some very fine landscapes, of course, not least the Giant's Causeway, but also many historic features such as Dunluce Castle, Carrickfergus Castle, or the Carrick-a-Reid Road Bridge, very, very well-known features. And this tourism income has a multiplier effect as well as it spreads through the rest of the economy, for example, through purchases of input to the sector. And this we've estimated at around about 50% of the tourism income. In addition, there's domestic trips by Northern Ireland residents. Now, this is a very important component. There's about 230,000 such trips a year, representing 68% of visits. So you can see the domestic side is very important in overall tourism terms. And even in entrance fees alone, those visits would be worth about £21 million per year. Now, we haven't included this spending by Northern Ireland residents in the equation because of the displacement effect exists, whereby these people might be spending their money elsewhere in the economy. However, domestic tourism is a very significant share, as I've said, and I'd argue that there is a net additional expenditure, as the alternative could be just sitting on your couch and doing nothing and spending nothing. So having the historic environment there does actually add something. It's maybe difficult to discern exactly what that is. And thirdly, the historic environment makes a very significant contribution to the construction sector, primarily through expenditure on rehabilitation and maintenance of buildings. In this case, there's no published figures to demonstrate the share that's due to historic buildings. But on the basis of similar estimates for studies that have been compiled for Scotland and Wales, RSM have estimated that the benefits are around about £512 million per year, or £470 million per year if you adjust for the double counting due to the grants to that sector. And that's a very significant figure, and notice one that's much more significant than tourism alone at the moment in Northern Ireland. And the sector is also very input dependent, so it also includes a very substantial multiplier effect of up to 1.95 times the direct income to the sector. So if you add all these things together, you have state and NGO transfers of around about £60 million per year, tourism income to the historic environment coming out at about £84 million per year, construction income net of about £470 million per year, altogether making for a total of £614 million per year. If we just make adjustments for leakage outside the sector, for instance, imports from abroad, but also for displacement effects, then you come to about a net figure of about £482 million per year. But to that you can add a multiplier effect of the impact as it spreads through the rest of the economy, which brings the total up to about £773 million per year, and a gross value added of about £360 million per year. The boring conventional economic assessment out of the way, what I also wanted to show is that a large share of those benefits depend on what we call wider social and economic benefits. And this list includes giving people a sense of place, identity and pride in their environment, especially in a time of could be anywhere sort of shopping streets that David was describing and main street frontages. And to the extent that this is shared, it also provides for community cohesion as well, and could be strengthened through people's actual participation in heritage conservation, and helping to ensure that heritage isn't viewed as something that is separate and elitist, but is something that actually everybody has a part in, everyone has a stake in. Access and learning, as you can imagine, is also quite an important economic benefit, because people are learning about their history, and that's a very important resource, not just for schools, but also for everybody in terms of learning about their historic origins and the community. It's an important source of training and skills, for example. Many of the people working in heritage conservation are actually volunteers, big large volunteer people, and these people pick up useful skills. There's also initiatives such as the Heritage Apprenticeship Programme, which allows young people to get particular skills in building, for example. So all these benefits are cumulative, they all build up, and they also contribute through public investment in the sector in economic regeneration as well, which also extends the benefits of the conservation of historic buildings to the wider environment, the wider setting in which they might be established, but I'll describe that in a moment. Now, in economic terms, if we want to do it in economic terms, we could describe some of those benefits as being direct use benefits, that's benefits to individuals through visits, etc., for tourism and construction. These are the direct benefits to the sector. But there's also indirect benefits, such as social interaction, that David was describing, for example, where you have attractive historic areas that bring people together and also induce spending in the local environment. And non-use, what we call non-use benefits, which is the sense of identity, appreciation of cultural heritage, irrespective of whether people visit that heritage or not. And very important in Northern Ireland, what we would describe as option value. That is the value of preserving this heritage for the future. Because you can imagine, just with the pure example of tourism alone, It has such a value now, but you know that, well, if it's protected and looked after, and the economy and the society continues to develop and improve, that these heritage features are going to be worth much more in the future than they are now. And this is what in economic terms we describe as an option value. So to provide some examples of that, I mean, in terms of sense of identity, we could, for example, have the Belfast shipyards. Not only are they important for the people of Belfast itself, but they're an internationally recognised icon that helps to promote Belfast across the world, and it's also now part of the Titanic signature project as well. The Derry Wars, obviously a feature celebrated by one particular community, but also a fundamental element of the city's shared identity. Dunluce Castle, or the Carrick-a-Reid Road Bridge, almost identifiable with the Causeway coast as the Giant's Causeway itself. And the two cathedrals of Armagh, the shared ecclesiastical capital of Ireland. In terms of community capacity, you can find examples from the restoration of the First Derry Presbyterian Church and the Playhouse Theatre in Belfast, now opened as multicultural and cross-community centres. Access and learning, you'd have examples such as the Armagh Observatory and Planetarium, the only one in Ireland, and the Navan Centre's exhibition on Ireland's Celtic heritage, located on the site of a major hill fort of really unknown, of Iron Age origins, but rather unknown purpose, a major development there. And the success of sites such as the Navan Centre as family destinations is essentially confirmation that heritage doesn't have to be sort of compulsory or dull, but it can also be fun and interesting for people. And on top of that, you have the benefits that the heritage provides in terms of regeneration as well. For example, the restoration of Belfast Cathedral Quarter, centred on St Anne's Cathedral and the Merchant Hotel, or of the former Ebrington Barracks in Derry, now linked to the city by a very impressive peace bridge. Or of the renovation of Armagh Jail, which is planned, and planned to become a boutique hotel and a heritage and learning centre. I presume in the future it would look a little bit more attractive place to stay than the picture at the bottom there, but I think that'll be quite fun. But it also demonstrates how things have kind of moved on, because the Armagh Jail, for example, only closed in about 1988. It's really not that very long ago. The fact that you could retain this heritage and potentially at the same time turn it into a useful economic and social asset is really quite exciting, I feel. So these are the wider economic and social benefits, which are founded on the benefits, if in the first instance, of individual well-being, which could be demonstrated, for example, through visits and what you might be willing to pay in terms of entrance fees, but also the benefits to you personally through the appreciation of that heritage and through the shared appreciation that you experience with others as part of your community. There's also the additional public good benefits which I've described, the sense of identity and belonging, sense of place, community cohesion, participation, and developing confidence within the community so that you have indigenous enterprise development. People start restoring their own homes, their own businesses, investing in their community. If they're proud of the community in which they live, then these returns sort of come naturally. And these public benefits in turn provide an environment for investment by government. Local authorities, entrepreneurs, and individual property owners are described. In this environment, there's a stimulating role for public investment in headline projects and major investment in urban regeneration, providing for the regeneration of whole communities and whole historic districts, which in turn attracts social activity to areas, ensuring that heritage, at one level at least, would be appreciated by many more people than could possibly be attracted to an art gallery or to a museum. So you can see that it's really it's a cumulative process. Really, you're starting off with a heritage conservation and appreciation, leading to benefits in terms of sense of place, community participation, community cohesion, and greater confidence within the community and its future. And this can attract and be stimulated by public investment, which in turn stimulates expenditure by local property owners and entrepreneurs and larger private investment. So it's all these types of, it's this process really which then creates an environment in which you have the tourism benefit, because tourists are then attracted to such places, and the expenditure as well in the whole construction sector, the benefits that regeneration and restoration of these places provides for the construction sector. So in actual fact, when we're looking at the more tangible economic benefits, like construction benefits and the tourism benefits, we're always talking about tourism and added benefits to tourism. We often forget ourselves. These are at the end of the process. It's really a virtuous circle whereby you're starting off with investment in the community, but the community itself, improving that community's confidence and sense of identity, and that in turn ensures that you have the tourism benefits and the investment in construction. So by way of conclusion, you have a significant economic contribution for the historic environment, firstly through individual well-being, the benefits that we receive from the historic environment, the wider social and economic benefits that I've described, the stimulus to economic activity and to economic regeneration, and then following on from that, the benefits for tourism and for construction industry, etc. Okay, thank you very much.